Okay, so that's La-Mulana 2 in the can. How long did it take me this time? Oh, not that bad. Well, how's my Steam clock? What does it say? Oh, okay, yeah, pretty reasonable, yeah. I mean, it's sure a lot better than last time. Actually, no, I think I would have preferred to waste 170 additional hours. You know, like the cool kids do. When the La-Mulana 2 release was looking like it was coming around the corner, I was hyped, but I was also anxious. When I played through and beat that first La-Mulana game, I rose to the challenge and never used any guides or hints, no matter how stuck I got. The problem was I got stuck a lot, and in the end it took me 260 hours. Could I do the same for its sequel, complete it without any kind of help? As far as I was concerned, that's how I was going to beat La-Mulana 2. The question was, how much time would I spend completely and utterly stuck? I was hoping for as little time as possible, but I knew that it was unlikely that I wouldn't hit a few walls. All I could do was prepare. Yes, I bought a new notebook. But more importantly, I reflected on my failings from the first game and developed a series of commandments so that I wouldn't fall into the same mental traps like I did before. During my playtime through La-Mulana, nothing hurt my problem-solving ability as much as my tendency to assume the order of progression, preemptively guessing that a puzzle or ability or something was reserved for later on in the game, and that I should ignore it because I was not ready to handle it, when actually I was perfectly ready to solve that puzzle, so I tricked myself into getting stuck. That arrogance helped bolster my Steam clock to 260 hours last time. I would have to do better. Ultimately, games like La-Mulana don't come around very often. If there was any challenge worth doing without any help, it would be a puzzle box adventure like La-Mulana. So that's why I did it again. I cracked out my multicolored pens, took a deep breath, and when that release date arrived, I prepared for a challenging but deep ruin exploration adventure. As soon as Zelpit gave me those map items, I started drawing detailed maps just like when I played the first game. It was time consuming, yes, and while other players were already in the La-Mulana ruins and the actual meat of the game, I was drawing out the cliffs of the surface, but was I ever gonna get lost? Not a chance. Beginning the adventure by exploring the early parts of the La-Mulana ruins was interesting. It reminded me of Super Metroid, how at the beginning of that game you are exploring the ruins of Metroid 1's world. You can't explore everywhere, but holy crap, there's scrolling, the rooms move, oh god, oh man, oh god, this is a lot to take, wow, whoa. It wasn't necessary, but I mapped out the entirety of the La-Mulana ruins before you entered the game proper. But when I did enter La-Mulana proper and the game loaded up the roots of Yggdrasil, that massive first level, I encountered a problem. Turned out my computer could barely handle La-Mulana 2. It's not powerful enough, at least not to maintain a consistent frame rate and record the footage you're watching now. That was disheartening, but it didn't stop me. The game was still playable, so after swallowing my disappointment, I got busy playing La-Mulana 2. It was so great to be back on the saddle, drawing maps and taking screenshots of damn near everything. I wasn't so meticulous this time that I recorded everything. I would be this diligent to help me solve puzzles, but it's not like Johnny Skeleton wishing he had met a nice girl before he died was going to be a crucial hint in opening a treasure chest, so I didn't screenshot dialogue like that. My recording skills were academic, so my play clock was at 4 hours by the time I was done with the roots of Yggdrasil, the first real field in La-Mulana 2. I was feeling impatient and starting to wonder if doing all that work was worth it. So I made a decision. I would stop making maps, and although I would still take screenshots, I usually wouldn't annotate them at all. I'll get back to you shortly on how that went. Was it a good idea? Well, we'll see. When I played La-Mulana 1, keep in mind it was years after it was released on Steam, so conversation on it wasn't prevalent, and the game had been through a series of bug patches. La-Mulana 2, however, was a different story. I was on the front lines of glitches, and many people around me were talking about it. That's not a problem because I didn't see or hear any noteworthy spoilers, but I would have preferred if I was completely unspoiled. It's not like hearing that you get a knife in the game ruined anything for me. Game completely spoiled! I did chat about it with some friends, but I was the only one giving any kind of help. My friends understood what I was doing and knew I did not want to be spoiled. There was a kind of satisfaction that I got from having La-Mulana 1 in my backstory. You recognize terms from the first game like Virtual Wise Man. I liked how early they give mantras in the Jed Pillar. In the first game, the mantra stuff was a late game mechanic, but in the sequel, it's a whole verb set that you get early in the journey. Or at least, normally you get the Jed Pillar early. With me, I didn't get a certain item in a Nuven, and thus never fought the Guardian Kujata for the Jed Pillar while I moved on to the deeper parts of Eglana. So that was a mistake, and the crux of the first time I got stuck in La-Mulana 2. So, in a Nuven, there is this glove you use to push blocks. The field brings it up pretty early and describes it pretty distinctly like, hey kid, you're supposed to get this before long. But me? I overlooked it and progressed deeper into Eglana regardless. The actual glove is in a treasure chest in a Nuven. The puzzle to solve it is actually pretty simple, but me? I looked at that room, at that puzzle, and assumed I couldn't solve it and get the treasure without the pushing glove. That's another tendency of mine that should be a commandment. Don't be so presumptuous on how to solve a puzzle. My own presumption is my biggest adversary in these games. So I'm making my way through Eglana without the pushing glove, and although there are a few puzzles I can't solve without it, I'm still getting places. I was exploring a lot of new places, but at the same time, feeling like I was underprepared for these places. Like I didn't have the tools necessary to get past obstacles gracefully, and everything is just a little bit too hard. It's a feeling I felt when I played La-Mulana 1, and it's a feeling I would be more familiar with in this sequel. So while the glove is just resting at a Nuven, I'm going to some higher difficulty places like the Immortal Battlefield, the Icefire Treetop, and even the Gate of the Dead, where I obtained the Vihara, which adds versatility to your weapon attacks. Eventually, I found myself stuck. I couldn't solve any more puzzles and I wasn't making any progress, but deep in my mind I had a feeling that the key to getting unstuck in this juncture was getting that glove. Eventually, I looked through my notes and got curious about revisiting the room where the glove is held. The tablet in the room tells you how to solve the puzzle, but no. I had to look at the pushing block and assume that you needed the glove to solve the puzzle when the glove is what you get from solving it, mistaking the chicken for the egg. I felt like a fool. And the reason why I felt like a fool is because I was a fool. At least I got to go through the early parts of the game with a Vihara infused whip. So I was good for a little while, but that was hardly the last time that I was stuck or doing that thing where I explore the game but in ways and in areas that are non-optimal or not preferred or expected. Meanwhile, as I'm playing this game, I'm thinking about how this is a launch release and there is bound to be some bugs. More on that later. I had to be wary about stuff like that. If there was a glitch, I'd hope that it'd be obvious. So it wasn't terribly long before I was stuck again. Surprise! This time it was in the Immortal Battlefield. I had no idea how to start the boss battle with the Guardian Jormungand. I'd unleashed water among the field and had raised a mural of Jormungand, but I didn't know how to make the Ankh appear. So I progressed through other parts of the game like I do, including the late game field, the Dark Lord's Mausoleum. All the while I'm hearing about the power of the storms and the Mjolnir, which I knew I would get from beating Jormungand, but I couldn't figure out what to do in the Immortal Battlefield. I think I even got to the Takamagahara Shrine to give you a sense of all the places I ventured into while Jormungand rested impatiently back at the battlefield waiting for a fight. So what was the solution? Basically, there's an item called the dinosaur figure that you use to open a strange room behind the immortal battlefield proper. You peeve off this guy named Indra and he activates the Ankh in Jormungand's room. The dinosaur figure is found in a chest in the bottom parts of the field, and I, like usual, ignored it because I thought I didn't have the tools to open it, and I kinda forgot about it. That's another failing of mine. While I did have a Word document open with some notes, I wasn't using it a whole lot. My note-keeping was lacking. I was being lazy, in many cases I paid the price. At the very least, I should have been marking down every unopened chest. Every unopened chest should have been on my mind a lot. Regardless, eventually I did go back to that room, destroyed the statue in the corner, and got the figure. I beat Jormungand, got the Mjolnir, and once again I had a good sense of where to go, at least for the next little while. It was around this time that I discovered a trick to the Corridor of Blood. Up to that point, I thought that the Corridor of Blood was only used for me to enter through the Valhalla door and end up in the annex of the Shrine of Frost Giants. But then I went back into the Corridor of Blood from that shrine and came out in the Ancient Chaos, and then again into the Hall of Malice, where that thread ends because when you go back into that door, the Corridor of Blood is a long vertical tube that you can't climb up. More on that later. We'll return to the Corridor of Blood. Then I got stuck at the Shrine of Frost Giants, the Hall of Malice, and the Dark Lord's Mausoleum. What item was I missing now? From what I knew, it was the feather, the double jump ability. I was making progress all around, just without that crucial feather. I even triggered an event when I found Ratatoskr at the Icefire treetop. That part is hard to come by because those events are pretty arbitrary. There is a tablet in the Roots of Yggdrasil that tells you about Ratatoskr heading up to the Icefire treetop, but I'm pretty sure you have to fight him at the mortal battlefield before he goes there. It all just leads to Ratatoskr opening up a path to Heaven's Labyrinth, but that's not where I needed to go. Regardless, the soul gate there will open if you have enough guardian souls, and I had nothing else to do. It wouldn't be long before I was stuck again, but I had some good times in Heaven's Labyrinth in the meantime. There's that boss, Glacis Labolas, who's a repeat of the one boss from the first La-Mulana game, Chio, but this time I knew to duck to the side so the trap, never mind. So with the 1.1.1.2 update, some glitches were fixed, but some were also made, including the infamous Griffin glitch, which made beating the Griffin and completing Heaven's Labyrinth impossible. Unwanting to spoil myself of anything, I asked a friend to check the La-Mulana 2 Steam forums to see if it was a glitch, and yeah, it was. It was August 11th, and I decided to take a break from La-Mulana 2 until a patch fixed that Griffin glitch. Even after the game was updated, it's not like completing that Griffin fight and getting the perfume in the Mobile Super X3 Plus got me past any roadblocks, although being able to finally kill those super skeletons was satisfying and made exploring at Glana a little easier. So as I'm stuck once again, I'm getting the idea that what I need is the feather so I could double jump, but I don't know how to get to the top half of Dark Lord's Mausoleum where I was told that the feather was. Some tablets would tell me that you get to the top half through the Corridor of Blood, but I didn't know how to navigate that upward chute through the Hall of Malice door. So while I was stuck, I started wandering around, including revisiting old NPCs to see if they had any new information, and I lucked out when I re-met Gerd, the NPC in the Shrine of Frost Giants. She outright spells it out what to do. I went back to the Corridor of Blood in Valhalla and used the Beherit to change the angle of the blood chute. Looking back, there is a tablet in that room that has a picture of a man using the Beherit to interact with the Corridor Blood Star, but when you first see that tablet, you wouldn't recognize the Beherit, and its illustration is so small that it's hard to make out the details. I don't know how I feel about NPCs changing their dialogue because sometimes it seems like the changes usually come at arbitrary points and you never know when to go revisit an NPC. If you want to keep up with them, sometimes you need to make rounds and check up on them. I found my way to the top parts of the Dark Lord's Mausoleum, and from there I got to the feather. Keep in mind that I had done a whole lot of work before getting to that feather, and I felt late to the party. I had vanquished both Anu and Aten-Ra, two guardians that are probably best dealt with later than I did. Anu was especially egregious because trying to navigate the ancient chaos without the feather, especially the large vertical corridor up to his Ankh room, was pretty much the biggest pain in the butt I experienced during my time with La-Mulana 2, especially since I did it before getting the perfume and I couldn't permanently defeat some of those skeletons. Once again, I was almost certain that I was under-equipped for that dungeon and that boss, but I had nowhere else to go and nothing else to do. La-Mulana 2 is a challenging game, but it's also very good at communicating to the player when they are doing something wrong or are underpowered. Before the patch fixed that griffin bug, I had discovered the Twins' chest, which holds a Cog of Antiquity, and even after that patch I was stuck trying to figure out how to get that cog. That cog was necessary for so many things, including activating the Hall of Malice. It would take a while before I'd finally snatch that cog, but it was always on my mind. At this point, I got better at annotating my screenshot images. Up to that point, I wasn't labeling any of the tablet screenshots, but that had to change. What I did in La-Mulana 1 was I would put the location of the tablet in the file name, but this time around, I just marked down the picture with some keywords and that was good enough. At a certain point in the journey, the entirety of ABOUND is swarmed with monsters. The enemy compositions of every room gets bolstered. I don't know if I like that. All those foes just got annoying. And I know this is very subjective, but I didn't find it to be a good challenge. It was hard in a shallow and annoying fashion. Anyway, the cog was the one last time that I really got stuck. I thought I needed it to continue, but didn't know how to get to that chest in the twins' room. In so many corners of ABOUND were unsolvable problems, including Vidofnir at the bottom of Icefire Treetop. I had yet been to the underworld and had been collecting tidbits on what to do there and how to get there, but I committed the ultimate sin once again, and assumed that I was not quite ready for the underworld, and that all the puzzles I was stuck on were prerequisites before venturing into that place at a later date. During this time, I did obtain the ancient battery, tucked away in the immortal battlefield. I figured that you had to enter that room from the top, so I started exploring up there. There was an eye still active in that room where he fights the Veepdogger, so I guessed that I had to do something to open up the door into the room below where the chest was. Many rooms in the immortal battlefield have names aligned to mantra words, so I picked the four main elements, fire, water, earth, and wind, and that unlocks the room below, and that's how I got the ancient battery. The actual tablet that tells you how to get into that room is in the eternal prison, the underworld. It's a real crucial hint, and only by luck did I solve that puzzle without it. So how did I get into the underworld? The Corridor of Blood was the key. The last entrance to the Corridor of Blood cycle is the Eternal Prison, but it's blocked by a special seal. Now, I don't recall how I got this idea in my head, but it was my understanding that every gate in the Corridor of Blood, all 6 of them, were sealed off, and only by killing guardians and feeding it more blood did more exits unlock. So when I saw this seal, I just assumed that it would unlock when I killed more guardians, just like the soul gates. Then, as I looked over my notes and screenshots, I came across the words of Izanagi, who said he sealed off the underworld and gave the mantra sequence to unlock that seal. I took his words to that seal in the Corridor of Blood, and lo and behold, it opened up and I finally reached the Eternal Prison. Once again, I had assumed the order of progression and got myself stuck and lost, but that was the last time I was roadblocked to that degree. From then on out, it was relatively smooth sailing and consistent progression. Eventually, I found that tablet in the Eternal Prison that tells the player how to get to the cog, and woo, finally had the cog, so I started up the Hall of Malice, beat all the sub-bosses, and took down Echidna. Seriously, Echidna was my first Guardian boss in a long while. When I finally turned my full attention to the Eternal Prison, I had to stop and reread so many tablets and texts. I'd been given so many hints and tidbits over the course of the game that it was time to go through my screenshots and archives and get myself caught up with the workings of the Eternal Prison. It was study time. Let's fast forward to the end of the game, the Spiral Hell. When I got to the end of the dungeon, that room with Mother's face, I was frustrated because it's a pain to get there until I found the Holy Grail tablet, and I couldn't figure out how to start the battle. Only then did I realize that excessive force was using all the words at once, which usually kills you, but I had never tried it before, so lucky. The first time I beat the final boss and Lamisa rides that stone column up to the room with the Holy Grail tablet, I thought, oh crap, I'm about to be crushed. So I hopped off the lift onto the ground below, and I don't think that's supposed to happen. If you wander around there, the looming theme that plays before the fight with the ninth child plays, as well as the escape sequence theme overlapped on each other. You can't go anywhere or do anything except reset, so I'm thinking it's a glitch? It was a bummer, but the rematch with the ninth child went pretty good. Towards the end of the rematch, I got so fed up with the guy that I pulled out my pistol and shot him dead like that one scene in Indiana Jones. That's the most La-Mulana thing I could do. I'd go so far to say that's the whole reason the pistol is in the game. Something is really pissing you off? Pull out your gun and shoot it like Professor Jones. And that was the end of my La-Mulana 2 journey. Once again, I'd played through the whole game without guides or hints or whatever, and I finished it at a reasonable clock this time around, or at least I think so. Thankfully, this time I didn't restart my game to force myself to reevaluate every bit of information. I don't think I'm the only one to complete La-Mulana 2 without a guide. It seems like there are more than a handful of players out there finishing La-Mulana 2 without any help, and I think it's because this sequel is so much better at handing information to the player than its prequel. There were some real head scratchers, but for the most part, if you just keep track of everything, you can get the job done. Just remember the golden rule: never assume the order of progression. Now, what do I think about the game as a work? Pretty great actually. This game was easier than the first La-Mulana, but like I said before, because the game is better at presenting its riddles. I also think the race scanner, that application that tells the player which tribe wrote which tablet, is a great way to imply information for other fields. Do I have any problems with the game? A few small ones. For example, and this might be my confirmation bias, but it seemed like it reused too many gameplay tropes from the first game, like reusing boss ideas. For the most part though, I think how this game functions as a sequel, or rather, a companion piece of the first game, is outstanding. You know, in the first game, in the Mausoleum of Giants, you had those murals with the astronaut suit and upside down tree, and while I was playing that game, I analyzed the hell out of them and assumed it was going to be the solution to a puzzle, so when I got to the end of the first game, I was wondering what those things were for. Like I missed a solution to a couple puzzles and that there were a few loose ends abound. No, actually, they were hints to Another Ruins, and the franchise's Ancient Aliens backstory. I do like Ancient Alien stories, insert that meme with the guy with the weird hair. So I love those elements of the plot. There were definitely hints of that in the first game, but this sequel took it to another level. It took me a long time to figure out that the clay doll outfit was an astronaut suit, but that revelation was so cool. Something that was foreshadowed in those murals in the prequel turned out to be a crucial item in the sequel. I really like Ancient Alien stories, and talking about it reminded me that my first rub with that genre is actually one of those Land Before Time sequels. Like in the 3 dozen direct-to-video sequels, they threw in a story where aliens disguised as dinosaurs visit Littlefoot and his gang. Anyway, without thinking too hard into it, I don't think there are any more loose ends to the La-Mulana story that could lead to a third game, but I would appreciate that. Maybe Mulbrook can be the star of this next one. She's perfect to have the torch passed on to her, and it would be the first game to be completely scored by Cyndi Lauper. Or the devs could make a game like it without it being a sequel. I wish La-Mulana was a genre in the way that Dark Souls has become a genre. That mix of Metroidvania and puzzle box is so delightful, but I can understand because making this kind of game and making it really good would take a lot of inspiration and effort. If I were to play a game like this again, I think I would learn from this experience. Remember the golden rule: never assume the order of progression. Also, draw maps so that you know where you have and haven't explored, because that was a problem often enough. Also, write down the room names because that comes up a lot. I will likely replay this game in the future, for many reasons, including to see what it's like to navigate it in the expected path. There was a lot of pseudo-sequence breaking in my playthrough, so having a more normal venture into La-Mulana 2 would provide a new experience. I'm serious, I spent 70% of this game off the regular path. I'm feeling a lot better towards La-Mulana 2 than the first game, which reaffirms my belief that the first game would have a bigger place in my heart if I hadn't taken 260 hours to complete it. To reiterate, it took me 92 hours to complete this game, although my endgame timer came up 71 hours. It was good to play a La-Mulana game again. These games are precious and unique, and I really liked La-Mulana 2. In a way, my extended playtime of the first game has been redeemed since my time with the second has been much more reasonable. So that's a takeaway from all this. I had some rough spots, but ultimately my time with La-Mulana 2 wasn't that bad. And honestly, that's what I was hoping for.